All right, buckle in, boys and girls, and others undecided, not sures, or whatever you want to call yourself in this day and age, because I don't really care. I'm going to have a fun stream tonight talking about some of this stuff and drink my coffee. So tonight I got a little thing different. People know I do like doing philosophy reviews, and I know somebody had asked me just recently to do a review on Aaron Ra's discussion with a couple. I think it was Jake the Muslim. I think that's what his name was. And I saw some clips from it, and I definitely am interested, and I definitely probably will do a review on that. It's pretty bad. But this is a little bit different than my types of reviews, because this one you wouldn't think has philosophical overtones. But you know what? I think that it does. I think that I could make something out of this, because I watched this video, and it's by a YouTuber by the name UNDOOMED. Some of you may know him. Some of you may not. I am a mod for him when he does his live chats. I try to get over there and help him moderate. I don't see a lot of moderators over there, so I think it's pretty few, but I've been around his channel for a very long time. Very good content creator, in my opinion. I think he tells it the way it is. I know he's very controversial. He's one of those people, whether you like him or hate him, he has excellent video editing skills. I mean, top notch. The dude is pro. I mean, I don't know what he does professionally for a living, but I'm sure it's probably relating something along those lines, because the guy is top notch. And just like a lot of content creators, you either like people or you don't like them, right? I mean, there doesn't seem to be much middle ground if you watch them. You watch them because you enjoy their content, or you watch them because you hate view. I'm one of those kind of, I guess, controversial YouTubers, even though I don't know why. I don't say anything controversial that much. I don't know why I get so much flack. I really don't. I generally try to be middle ground on most things, and I get flack for that too. I mean, I have a friend, Jeff Holiday. The dude hates centrists, man. He's like, pick a lane, go left, go right, swerve, do something. Just don't stay in the center lane. But I'm like, well, that's kind of where I'm at, though, because I mean, I hate all sides, and so to me, the middle is the best place to be. But anyways, UNDOOMED did a video called Gender Doc Says the Quiet Part Out Loud. Some of you guys watched it. I did put in the video description of the videos, and I said, hey, before you watch this video review, please go check it out. Go watch his video first. If not, watch it after. It's a short video. It's only 15 minutes. So you had plenty of time to watch it before I went live. And if you are able to watch it as part of the replay crew, go check his video out afterwards. Say hi to him for me. Let him know that I did send him over, and send you guys over there and to wave hi to him. All two people that may watch this video. Although, one of my reviews got pretty good with Aaron. That one got about 15,000 views. This one probably get it. If I did on Rumble, probably 1,000. That's what my last one got. This here over YouTube, I don't know, 400 or 500, but we'll see. Let's see if I can predict if I can get 400 or 500 views. If you guys will help promote this, that'd be great. I know UNDOOMED will probably want to check it out. He said he's looking forward to that review, and so maybe he'll help shout me out a little bit. But let's see what we got. So anyways, let's dive into this. I'm going to be pausing this quite frequently. It's mainly about a doc doing a TED Talk talking about gender ideology. And UNDOOMED is in his true to form, basically just crapping all over her. That's what he does. And he's good at it. He's really good at it. It's not really complicated. And I even said on Twitter, hey, dude, I really like this video. And he's like, I didn't really put much effort into it or something. And I'm like, you didn't need to. It was just kind of like just common sense. I mean, but I think there was more that could have been discussed. And if that's your critique of his argument or his video, then that's fine. But I don't think that he would really mind that, because that really wasn't the intent. The intent was just to kind of go, hey, look, this is some stupid stuff this person's saying. Let me kind of show you why. And yes, he makes him personal with the person making those arguments, but he's always been like that. If you go back, watch his video 6, 7, 8 years ago, he was really infamous for pointing out Karens and just dogging on Karens, and they were entertaining videos. I mean, he made 250,000 subs off of it, and I happen to like those Karen videos, so whatever. But like I said, I'm going to be stopping this quite frequently to kind of dive into what the speaker is kind of going for, and then putting my own viewpoint on it. And I will be giving you my opinion, and I'll be kind of maybe talking a little bit what I think would be the philosophical overtones of what she's talking about and gender ideology. Take it for what it is. Take it or leave it, whatever. We're here to be entertained, to just have some fun tonight and drink coffee. So let's go from there. And by the way, don't compare his voice to me, okay? The dude's got the voice that could just, melt steel. I mean, the dude's just tailor-made for YouTube. I can't compete. Not even going to try. All right, here we go. Let's dive right into it. And let me know if you can hear it. I just put it on audio.
Hey everyone, and welcome back. Today we're going to look at a speech by a doctor who wants to trans your kids. And by that, I mean surgery. So without further ado, let's get right into it.
Right when Avery...
And before we do, let me let the general disclaimers out there. All this is under fair use. Please don't copyright strike me and don't sue me, UNDOOMED. I appreciate that. Yeah, thank you. So this is fair use. Here we go.
was handed to her mom. Her mom sensed a special bond, a mother's intuition, that Avery was different.
Oh, we all know where this is going, don't we?
On top of everything else, I think I'm getting my period.
And her parents, as soon as Avery was a preschooler, knew that as a daughter with a penis.
Okay, let me just stop it right there. Okay, so right off the bat, you have a parent who's saying that there's something unique about their child. I think all parents do that. As people may know, my daughter came and visited me yesterday, and I took her to meet some people, and I basically paraded her around because I was proud, of what she's accomplished. She wants to be a dental hygienist, and people know that I'm going to support her in that, and I help to pay for her schooling and things of that nature. But when my daughter was born, I was there at the hospital. I didn't remember going, you know what? She seems like a boy to me. She's going to be a boy. There's nothing about a child when they're born that's going to be able to tell you anything about what this person relates to gender ideology. All you know is that they're going to be a biological sex that's going to be male or female or whatever you want to differentiate between the categorizations of the human species. There are two main mutually exclusive and jointly exhaustive categories. There's the male of the species and the female. So she's already starting off saying, hey, look, here's this parent that just felt something different with my child. Well, that's kind of normal. And it's also frightful because the parent is now impressing their view onto the child. They might say, hey, look, man, I really felt like my daughter was supposed to be a boy, a son. I mean, my daughter's name, well, I'm not even going to say my daughter's name because I just there's some dishonest people out there. But my daughter's name is actually gender kind of neutral. It could be, used for a boy or girl kind of stuff. I mean, the long form's a girl, but the shortened nickname is a boy, right? So as soon as she says something about my daughter has a penis, there's a problem to be had here, right? This is why if you're drinking tonight, drink more. If you're getting high tonight, smoke up, toke up. Because right there, you're starting with this premise that, I'm having a child that's biologically clearly male phenotypically, and I'm going to just say that she's my daughter and she happens to have a penis. By the way, I haven't got into what UNDOOMED even said yet. See, I told you I'd be stopping pretty quickly. I listened to this and I'm like, oh, God.
Oh, this is the stupidest of timelines.
There are no chicks with dicks, Johnny. Only guys with tits.
They needed to advocate for her rights.
Exactly what rights? What rights do trans people not have that everyone else has?
And
I've asked that same question, right? And let me, again, before I get too far into this video, if you're watching this video live or you're watching in the replay crew, if you wish to talk about the subject, please do so intelligently. If you start off with pejoratives, invectives, insults, or trying to label somebody transphobic or bigoted or homophobic or anything like that, you're not welcome on my channel. This channel does not tolerate any of that stuff. None of us are bigots. None of us are transphobes. None of us are against anybody expressing themselves any way they want. It's not that kind of a topic. We will talk about a little bit like that, but I mean, as far as like people being bigoted, no, we have no tolerance for bigots. So if you are somebody who wants to talk about the subject, absolutely, I'm happy to do so. I have people in my live chat, I'm not going to call anybody out, but I have people that I'm engaging with. Unfortunately, I had to call it short the other day, but I'm still talking to people, and there's probably about 3 or 4 people I generally discuss this topic with, and I might actually go live on Rumble. Not tonight, I don't think. I don't know, maybe. It depends. But definitely I'll go on a live call-in show on Rumble. And I'm going to move this video to Rumble too. But I'm going to have you guys be able to call in and ask me questions in real time to get my thoughts on it. But again, I'm just letting people know for the replay crew, if you're going to leave a comment and you have any kind of nastiness, or if you say something nasty about transgenders, or you say something nasty about anybody pontificating about the subject, you're just going to be removed, blocked, and forgotten about and accomplish nothing. So I'm just going to get that right out of the way because nobody has time for that. It's basal, it's puerile, it is just so ridiculous that people are trying to shut down the conversations by merely saying a certain word to somebody, that you're this, you're that, you're racist, you're bigot, you're homophobic, you're transphobic. These words do not have any meaning anymore because they've been so watered down. So I just want to get that out of the way, because somebody's going to do it in my live chat or in the comment section eventually. They always seem to do that. And I'm going to give them one chance. So my mods, if anybody does come in, I'll give them one chance. One chance, and then we'll go from there. Sound good? All right.
They would allow her to live in her affirmed gender.
How would it even be possible for someone who hasn't gone through puberty to know all these things with such certainty? Spoiler alert, they don't.
Yeah, and it's not even a matter of certainty. It's a matter of, even in general, right? You don't have to be certain of your beliefs. Certainty is a subset of knowledge, and knowledge is a subset of belief. Generally, all our beliefs are contingent upon other beliefs. There's like a web of beliefs in coherentism where our beliefs are predicated upon other beliefs. And then in a foundationalist approach, they're predicated upon axiomatic type, what's called properly basic beliefs. But how would you know the gender expression of your child when they're born? You're tabula rasa at that point. Nobody in the world would be able to tell you what that child is going to like, what that child is going to dislike. They have no cognitive functioning, higher executive order functions at that moment when they're born. They only know all they want to do is suckle and piss and crap. That's what babies would do. They eat, suckle, piss and crap. I mean, if you ever had a kid, that's what they do for quite some time. And I remember specifically when I had my daughter, I was like, man, I can't wait for my daughter to get old enough to where I can know what she wants. I actually remember thinking about this. I'm not making this up. I was telling my dad, I was like, man, there's going to come a time when my daughter gets old enough where she'll be able to tell me what her interests are. And I was hoping there'd be, like science and physics and stuff like that, but whatever. I mean, she is going to be a dental hygienist and maybe orthodontics eventually, which is scientifically based, so I'm going to give her that. But I remember that because there's no way I could have known what my daughter's gender expression would be. Hey, we got hereticals out there, and we got Willie Mays out there, and thank you for joining us, Kimamaki and April. I'm not ignoring you guys. I just haven't been a chance to address my live chat yet. So I will take questions from the live chat live. I'm not going to open this up for a live panel. I'll do that on Rumble, but please ask questions. But yes, hereticals, good to see you, my friend. Let me know what your thoughts are. But yeah, like I said, I don't know how anybody could have known that. It's not even a matter of certainty. I do think Doom's choice of words is probably a little bit much there because, again, certainty is being a subset of knowledge. Even if you say, well, how would you know that? Yeah, you couldn't know that. How would you even formulate a belief? Because your belief would be unjustified. When my daughter was born and I said, look, I believe that she's going to end up being a boy, why would I think that? What would that be justified? And by the way, my daughter is a girl. I mean, she may be a little bit of a tomboy in sports, but she is definitely not a boy. She doesn't want to be a boy.
Early on, they sought the help of a child psychologist so that she could live in her affirmed gender.
We've been over this.
Currently, only the principal at the school knows that Avery is gender expansive or transgender.
I hate that term, gender expansive. But first, she starts off when the child's born. They've already predetermined that this child is somehow the opposite sex. They've already determined that. Whether they based it upon just their own wanting the child to be different, or maybe the child has expressed feminine traits, whatever. They just have determined this child to be the opposite of what they were born at. That's what it means to be trans. And then they get the school involved. And there's been a recent push to have the schools be legally, under law, have to notify parents if their child is having things of the nature where they want to use different pronouns or being bullied for gender expression, things of that nature. And I've been on Twitter trying to explain to people, look, as a parent, you have a right to know about your child. You have a right to know about your child. If your child is expressing differently, you have a right to know. If your child wants to use different names, you have a right to know. Anything that happens at school is your business, period. And they'll say, well, what happens if the parents are, fundamental Christians and they might put their life in danger? Well, then they're bad parents. And then you get them away from the parents, but you cannot hold accountable the actions of good parents by the actions of bad parents. That's ridiculous. We cannot live in a society where all you're going to do is take the extreme and say, look, just because one bad parent may exist, we cannot have the good parents know about their kids. That's just ridiculous. So there's a bit push for that the parents have a right to know about their child, because if somebody is coercing my child to express differently, then I want to know about it, because I think a lot of these things are influenced by external factors, by people in their lives, whether it be their parents or be the teachers or by other students. A lot of trans people have exceptional amount of influence upon them because of social contagions, so to speak. Not saying all of them, but certainly that could be the case, right? I mean, these parents here, when their child was first born, they already had determined that for some reason they were trans. How they came about with that idea, I have no idea. But that had to lay into the groundwork for this child to believe that they are the opposite sex. And we'll get into that more in the video about what they would mean to be born in the wrong body. Yeah, Hereticals makes a very good observational point. He says, I noticed that a lot of trans kids seem to be the children of activists. Yes, I have definitely noticed that. Now, it's not always the case. I have some friends that have trans children, but I would say the vast majority of them have parents that are probably what we consider to be activists, or at least along the lines of, in the LGBTQ plus communities. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that, but it just seems to be a very high propensity for these students, for these students, I guess, in school to be swayed into, wanting to be accepted by aligning themselves as a member of the LGBTQ plus. When I was growing up in the 80s, allies were people that supported the gay and lesbian to alliances to have their own spaces, to have their own, they get not even like have new separate rights, just have the rights that we all have, right? We were all for gay marriage. We're like, look, if you want to date a guy, date a guy. If you're a girl, want to date a girl, date a girl. None of us really cared in the Gen X community. At least let's say, like when I was growing up, the fundamental radical Christians are out there going, oh, if you're gay, you're going to burn in hell and stuff like that. We mocked them. We used to laugh at them. We used to treat them like pariahs because they were just nasty, bigoted people. We were the allies of the gay and lesbians. Now, if you don't affirm a child's gender at age 2 or 6 months or when they're born, all of a sudden you're now anti-LGBTQ plus. I mean, that makes absolutely no sense. They're seriously just alienating the allies that have been aligned with the gay and lesbians for countless decades. I mean, since the 50s and 60s, where they started pushing for equal rights, and they well deserved them because there was hatred and bigotry and laws set against them, just like there was against black people. I mean, the Jim Crow laws. We have a history of racism in our country. I've never denied that. I definitely think there's, institutional, systemic racism to a point. I think that we've made significant strides, but we all saw that in the 70s and even the 80s and 90s, that the system still hadn't reached equality yet. And I'm not sure we're quite there yet, but it's a hell of a lot better. That's for damn sure.
What's with inventing new words all the time? Gender expansive.
And when the
That is
signs
weird.
of puberty started to show, they took her to a gender clinic for kids.
All right, now see right there, we got a problem.
The fact that that phrase even exists is a crime against humanity.
And I agree and I disagree. Look, I do think that there might be some children out there that have just this, gender dysphoria that need counseling. And I'm not at all in any way against that. They need to have psychological counseling. The problem with the disconnect is that their brains are not aligning what they perceive their phenotype or body to be. And again, I think a lot of it is due to peer pressure. And I don't mind there to be gender, counseling out there and support groups for children for this. But the thing is it's so much more prevalent now than it was 20 years ago, and I think that is a social contagion. It definitely existed way back then, but in the very, very minute proportion to society. And yeah, it's a little hyperbolic, obviously not a crime against humanity, but I can understand where he's coming from. He's like, these are children. Let them be children. They don't know what they're going to think of or what they want themselves to be when they're 18. They go through changes. They go through expressions differently. You can have a 3-year-old that might want to wear a dress or put on high heel shoes. Who knows, right? Wear makeup. You might want to have, a girl play with G.I. Joe and a boy play with Barbie. Who cares? They might be thinking they're attracted to the opposite sex when they start hitting puberty type's age. And so they go through these phases because their minds are still plastic. There's still plasticity there. The mind has not really formulated the coherency until age 25. So to think that they have not, to think that they have solidified their gender, sexuality, or anything like that at a very young age is just absolutely ridiculous. There's no scientific way to determine between two children, one of which is just expressing feminine because they happen to be gay or they have to be just effeminate, as opposed to somebody who's trans. I don't see how you would ever make that scientific determination or even psychological determination. They're still growing. They're still going through the process of growing. They haven't even hit puberty yet. And I think that's where Undoomed's coming from. Again, I'm not speaking for Undoomed in any way, shape, or form. He's articulate. He's intelligent. He can definitely put forth his own opinions, and he does so on a very large channel. But I think that if I had to guess, I would guess that Undoomed doesn't care what adults do. I don't care I don't think he cares if somebody wants to transition later on in life. I think it's the children, just like I think it's the children, where they kind of jump the shark. And maybe he has some similar views about being born in the wrong body is not such a thing, and I agree with him on that. But I think it really boils down to the kids rather than the adults making their own decisions, especially informed decisions. I mean, obviously, there's some adults that may not be competent enough mentally to make specific decisions along these lines, but in general, definitely wait till adulthood to make certain decisions. All right, Chris, thank you. Hope you watch it later, man, and I'll get with you because we got to hook up, man. We got to do a show.
Start gender affirmation therapy.
Ooh, what? I was told that never happens.
Which is the use of medicines and possibly surgery later on to physically align someone with the gender in which they identify.
All right, and here's the problem what I have with this, and again, I guarantee it I'm going to get flack for it, and that's okay. You can disagree with me all you like. I don't mind that. Just be polite about it, because especially on these types of volatile topics, when I see people that disagree with me using these hyperbolic terms, all I think it does is harm the trans community. I think it harms the gay community. It harms the LGBTQ because you're not putting forth any productive. Now, here's the problem I have. Why are you going to change the body to match the mind if there's a possibility of changing the mind to match the body? If you have gender dysphoria and you believe that you are the opposite sex from your phenotype, I'm not saying this is the only possible way. I'm just saying if it was a preferred method where we could at least have the person no longer have the discomfort of gender dysphoria, that they are happy in their own body, and maybe they're just gay. Maybe they just realize they happen to be gay or effeminate. How is that not more parsimonious, aligned with what we understand for medical interventions, rather than radical gender surgery, hormone replacement therapy, or puberty blockers, or anything like that? I mean, they'll say that's like conversion therapy. No, that's not conversion therapy. I've asked that question many times on Twitter, and it's surprising when people actually think that's conversion therapy. Conversion therapy is when you have a gay person who you say to them, look, gay is wrong. I wanted to pray the gay away. I want to convert you to heterosexuality. That's definitely conversion therapy. Gay people generally, I think, are hardwired for the most part. I think there's some, obviously, nurturing. I mean, everything's nature, virtue, nurturing. But for the most part, you just can't just stop somebody being gay. They're gay. This is who they are. Okay. But I don't think it would make sense to say, look, we want to give you therapy where you're no longer gay, because that's not gender dysphoria. They're not having any problems with themselves. They're like, hey, I'm gay. What they're having is this, how society was looking at the gay people. They were looking at the external factors. Most of them probably, if they were left alone to their own accord, wouldn't be uncomfortable being gay. They would just be like, hey, yeah, I'm gay. But they have other people that are bigots telling them, oh, you can't be gay. You have the fundamental Christians telling me you can't be gay. So there's a lot of external factors on that. But internalization, they didn't have this dysphoria that you see what people are saying for the trans people, right? So there's a big difference between that when you're talking about conversion therapy. And I think it's more practical to try to treat the mind first rather than treating the body. But if you have to treat the body, to have radical changes to a child that even hasn't got through puberty left is unconscionable. To me, that is medical malpractice. And again, give me all the flack you want for that. But these are children we're talking about who, many of them, may go on later on in life and say, look, I regret having this. And they say, well, here's the studies of regrets. These are short-term self-reported studies. We don't know what the long-term effect is going to be. And even still, even if you just have a handful of people that regret things, I think it's a lot more than that, though. I think it's a lot more because most of them don't want to realize that what they did to themselves, that they are going to be fundamentally incapable of experiencing certain things that humans have for human nature. And they don't know that as a children because they don't understand the adult relationships rather than, what they would imagine it would be as a child. I mean, I certainly didn't. I mean, I things change as you grow up, right?
No one under the age of 18 should be put on hormone treatments or
I agree.
be put through gender reassignment surgeries.
I am one of those.
And like I said, these studies for these numbers that people throw out there are very, very short-term studies with small sample groups with self-reporting. Again, even if 1 or 2 people regret it, that still should be 0. And even then, I still think that we don't know what's going to happen 20, 30, 40 years down the line. These surgeries have not been around that long to really understand the long-term effects. It's like saying, hey, we have ice pick lobotomies, and look, they're doing great. These people aren't complaining about them. So,
Pediatric endocrinologists or kids hormone doctors that treat children like Avery at Stanford Children's Health.
Well, that's your story. I think you're a despicable human being who prey on confused children.
And as a kids hormone doctor,
You're not a real doctor, are you?
I can't believe she just said that.
my training puts me in a unique situation to be able to help someone like Avery.
Yeah.
well, but what is she helping? And someone like Avery, again, what is it about this child where they have determined using any kind of real analytical scientific methodology, because this is philosophy, when we're talking about philosophy of mind, that this child was somehow born in the wrong body, because that gives us some serious philosophy, which we'll be talking about here shortly. But how do they make these determinations? They say, well, they test and they ask questions. They're going to ask a child questions about how they feel about reproduction rights in the future, how they feel about having children in the future, how do they feel about being sterilized by being put on puberty blockers and hormone replacement therapy and having internal organs atrophy, losing their uterus, losing their fallopian tubes, losing their ovaries. How are they going to ask a child these types of questions? It makes no sense to think that a child is going to be significantly aware of what is being asked of them when they are asked, do they want to go ahead and have hormone replacement therapy or puberty blockers or genital surgery. There's no possible way. And I'm sorry, but if you think otherwise, I don't think you ever knew what it was like to be a child. I mean, when you were like 6 years old, if somebody says, hey, we want to chop your nuts off, you'd be like, hell no. Or you'd be like, what does that mean? I don't know. Right? I mean, it's just, you don't process these things.
Yeah, you help them become lifelong patients and drug dependents.
And that's true, too. You got to remember, the people that get on the medical system, they're there for a very, very long time. I mean, they're going to need these hormones for indefinitely. Most of them have more than one surgery. Most of them have major complications in the surgery. And I'm sorry, whether it's 1 or 1,000, it's more than 0. And that to me is a problem. If it is even more than 0, then I'm going to have a problem with it. Because there are children right now, there's, 2,000 kids in the UK that have grown up that are suing doctors, and I think it's going to be a lot worse. My prediction is going to be that in the future, more and more doctors are going to be sued, like this particular doctor, for malpractice. And eventually they're going to say it's not cost effective to have these surgeries on people under 18. Just like contractual law, you have to be 18 to sign a contract. It's going to be the similar thing. Now, there are some exceptions to that, but for the most part, you have to be 18.
With the penis?
That will never not sound stupid.
Does your penis hurt?
No. What? Should
This
it?
is the most P word I've ever had on my channel.
Ask you a really inappropriate question.
She is not going to have the chest development, or the body shape that she wants.
That happens to a lot of real girls too. You're not guaranteed to be pretty in this life.
I do like the way he put that. You're not guaranteed to have the body shape you want. Hey, look, man, if I want to look like, was it Joey Swirl, the big bodybuilder on Twitter? That dude's, ripped. Jason Momoa, sure, love that. But it wasn't in the cards for me, right? I mean, just not genetically capable of having that type of body type. And so some people win the genetic lottery when it comes to looks. Some people don't. But, we have a lot of people that will go under the knife to have plastic surgery and spend hundreds of thousands of dollars to look differently. And most of them get botched pretty bad. I mean, there always seems to be complications. Look at all these movie stars that have lots of monies and fame, and they go under the knife and they just look unrecognizable. It boggles my mind that they destroy the natural beauty they have for this pursuit of perfection that is just unobtainable. It's idealistic. I remember Kenny Rogers was one of the first ones I remember seeing that I noticed, oh my God, he looks so much different than he used to. He's a completely different person. And then obviously there's many other people that have been in the light. Tara Reid ruined her body by going under the knife. It's just, to me, plastic surgery was one of those things that was developed in order to have people that have had horrific accidents and scarring and things of that nature to fix that, to make them look more, I hate to use the word normal because that's probably not the best word to use, but definitely more comfortable with themselves, where they don't feel like they're being stared at and things of that nature. And I'm all for that, of course. And I'm not saying that minor plastic surgery is a bad thing. If you think you need a little nip and tuck or whatever, knock yourself out, right? But some of these are very radical rhinoplasties where the nose has been so changed. I mean, who was it from Dirty Dancing? What's her name? She had her nose changed, and it just... Erin Gray. She had her nose changed, which was her defining feature that made her recognizable, and she regretted it because she took away the thing that made her unique in order to think that there was some kind of ideal perfection. And we're teaching young girls that you have to be this idealized version of femininity, and a lot of that is because of influences and social media. Yeah, Jennifer Grey. Yeah, exactly.
Instead, she is going to make testosterone.
Yeah, and when the testosterone hits, maybe the kid'll grow out of it. That happens a lot,
It does
Her
happen.
face is going to develop facial hair. Her voice is going to deepen. Her Adam's apple is going to become more prominent. Her chest will broaden.
Let's speed this up a little bit.
And of course, her testes and penis will enlarge.
Yes, that's normal human development for a male.
Don't blame me. Blame my gender.
Her parents knew that the signs of puberty needed to be put on hold with a
Why?
pubertal blocker.
Why?
Which is a medication that is used to stop the chemical messages from the brain to the rest of the body that says, hey.
Yeah, why though? Let me make it very clear. These puberty blockers were not designed to be on to do this. These are, from what I understand, off-label drugs that were used in prostate cancer that just happen to be have the effect to block puberty for small periods of time, a few months. They're not designed to put off puberty forever. You cannot do that. You cannot be a human to put off puberty forever. It will eventually happen, and the longer you put it off, the more difficult it will be, from what I understand. And so, I can understand for medical reasons if there's something medically diagnosed where puberty and having the hormones affect the child will complicate other things. These are called like comorbidities. But to stave off puberty merely because a child is wanting to be a different gender, that's malpractice to me. That's malpractice because they're not using it for medical reasons. They're using it for sociological reasons. And that's a big difference. If somebody has a medical problem, endometriosis or whatever, something about them, is that they did have an inflammation of the, and I'm not a doctor, but let's say that inflammation of the uterine wall, that if they went through puberty, it would exacerbate that. And they want to stave off the puberty for a few months while they treat that. Makes sense, right? But to use a puberty blocker to have a child not go through the normal hormonal development that their body was predisposed to do, that is taking away from the child's right to live their life as everybody else was. Because we all go through puberty. We all do. And people change as they go through puberty. Your brain changes, your wants, your needs, your likes. All of us change. It's a fundamental aspect of the human nature. And they're taking away from that child. Why? Because the child told them what they believed. Or worse, that the parents or the teachers or the friends or society is telling them, you have to do this or you should do this. And the child believes them because they think that the parent is doing what's best for them. And in this case, they're not. They're simply not.
It's time to develop.
It's also the exact same medicine that is used to chemically castrate rapists.
That's
but
true,
you don't
yeah.
like to talk about that.
Well, yes, that is the idea.
Yeah, well.
And they get sterile because of it. Again, is it the same drug for prostate cancer and to sterilize rapists? Is it the same thing? I don't know the organic chemistry of it, so somebody could tell me in the live chat. But these are off-label uses. That much I do know. But again, if you tell a child, a 12-year-old child, we're gonna prolong your puberty, we're gonna make it go further away, and it might cause sterilization, and probably will cause sterilization, where you won't be able to have children later on. How can you, with a straight face, tell me that child, that 12-year-old, is going to understand what that really means? I never wanted kids. I never did. I really didn't. I was like, no, kids are not for me. I don't see them in my future. It was 35 when I had my child. And I was like, this is the greatest thing ever. I'm going to change it for the world. I love my daughter more than life itself. I would delete every social media platform I had in order to protect my child if I needed to. Right? No, I love you all, but there's nothing that I love more than my child. And to think that if I would have said when she was born, I think that my child is a boy, what the damage I could have done to her would have been horrifying. But after I had my child, I was completely in a different mindset. My brain switched. I was like, I've got a kid now. You know, it's not longer of, I don't want a kid. I have a kid. Now what? And I loved it. I would not change that for the world at all. But how are you going to tell me the 12-year-old is going to be able to make that decision? Just like, one of the things I read was in 2021, there were 776 girls between the ages of 12 or 13 and 17 that had double mastectomies. How are you going to know as a 13, 14, 15-year-old that you want to have a double mastectomy? Yeah, and by the way, let me make it very clear in the live chat, it's a sandbox. It's a sandbox. Say what you got to say, throw out what you want to throw out there, talk. Again, safe space. Nobody's going to get offended. Nobody's mad. April is very, very intelligent. She's not going to get mad or anything. Don't try to read into emotions. I know there's a lot of emotive-less text, when you have live chats. And so, look, nobody should get mad about anything when you're in the live chat talking about these things. Let's stick to the actual topic rather than try to read into things, okay? We're just thinking out loud here, as April puts it.
Outside of landing the Hindenburg in a lightning storm, that's about the shittiest idea I've ever heard.
Oh, boy.
And with the use of a pubertal blocker, I can give Avery another 2 to 3 years so that she can be consistent with the gender in which she identifies.
Yes, along with osteoporosis and a whole slew of other side effects. Some of
these side effects, the osteoporosis, the bone density lessening, muscle atrophy, the uterus atrophying, fallopian tube problems, loss of ovulation. There's a whole, like you said, a slew of problems that come with these hormonal blockers that this child, there's no possible way is going to be informed of. None. And so why would you want to do this to your child? Why would you want to make your child have complications?
which aren't even known. But hey, why let a little thing like that get in the way?
And if she continues, then estrogen can be added
Ooh, yeah, that really gets the osteoporosis going.
to her therapy so that she could have the development that she would want.
Body modification for kids. It's great, isn't it?
However, if she should identify as the gender she was assigned at birth, the pubertal blocker can be stopped and she can have the pre-programmed puberty that she was supposed to have.
Yeah, the problem with that is they're not completely irreversible, and there is damage to be done. And again, why are we bothering with them if we know the child is going to have, puberty at a certain age? Then what are we doing? We're saying, oh, well, look, we're pre-programmed to have puberty between the ages of 12 and 15, let's just say. Sometimes it's later, sometimes it's earlier, whatever. But in that general range, right? Are we going to just say, hey, we don't know when the day where your puberty actually going to hit. We're just going to push it off to your 17 or 18. And by the time that happens, you've been on these hormone blockers for so long, you've already done irreversible damage to your body. What's the point?
You have no idea what kind of psychological damage is incurred by delaying
psychological
puberty
damage
for
as well.
several years.
So in Avery's case, she's going to want estrogen. And later on, she can decide if gender affirmation surgery is right for her or not.
The amputation of perfectly fine working body parts can never be the solution.
Gender.
Yeah, and that's another thing. Doctors do no harm, right? They take a creed to do no harm, right? The Hippocratic Oath. If you go to a doctor and say, look, man, I believe that I was supposed to be born without my right arm, there's no doctor in the world that's going to cut off your right arm. It's just not going to happen. They always go to say, look, you're having psychological issues. You might have you need a need for intensive therapy, but they're not going to remove the arm to satisfy the mind. So it's a malfunction of the mind. And I'm not trying to say that, look, transgender is a malfunction of the mind. I'm not calling it that. But I am saying that if you want to remove your right arm because you believe for some reason you're supposed to be born without it, that is to me a malfunctioning of the mind. And it would be something that's in the DSM, or something along the lines of a person who for some reason is having a psychological condition that they believe they're supposed to be born without something. Now, I'm not going to talk about extreme cases. There might be, extreme cases, and there's always outliers, but we're talking in general here, right? But don't you think it makes sense to say to the person who believes that their right arm should be amputated, hey, look, we could get you counseling and therapy, psychological therapy, where you can accept that you have the right arm. You may not ever fully, be comfortable with it, but you at least have that dysphoria reduced where you can function in life. Doesn't that make more sense to try to treat the mind over the body? Because the mind is not irreversible when it comes to that. Once you amputate the arm, it's done. There is no going back. The person decides later on, you know what? I've changed my mind. I'm now comfortable, and now I have a phantom limb thing, and they feel like they have an arm there. So I'm saying, always take the lesser approach to things rather than these radical gender reassignment surgeries, especially on kids. Again, when an adult does, I have issues with it, but they're adults. And adults, if they're informed, can make their own decisions. You want to get a tattoo, get a tattoo. You want to get a piercing, get a piercing. You want to, but I mean, still, I think it is very similar to somebody saying, hey, look, I want to get my right arm cut off as my genitals cut off. And it's funny because I just talked to somebody tonight that I've known, oh my God, for like 10 years. Matter of fact, a person who actually introduced me really to Google Hangout. So I think it was her Hangout that I was first introduced to. And she was over on Genetically Modified Skeptics live chat. Her name is Nadia Vet Chambers. And she was well known for having, I forget the surgery, ortho, whatever. But basically, your testicles removed. She was very proud that she had her testicles on a jar next to her table for so long. Very brilliant woman. I mean, Nadia was known for being exceptionally intelligent. Didn't understand half the shit she said because she was too smart. But, she was someone where she at least was intelligent enough to know what she was doing. And from what I understand, never had any regrets. Okay? So there are outliners. Don't get me wrong. There are outliners. But generally speaking, a doctor's not going to remove healthy tissue for no reason. Just because some kind of psychological mindset. And no, I'm not saying being transgender is wanting to cut your arm off, but if you want to cut your testicles off, then it is very similar. Those are still healthy tissues. That is very similar. The transgender aspect is a psychological aspect. But removing body parts that are healthy, that is very similar to like removing your arms. And for, like I said, there are outliners. It seemed to have worked for Nadia. And she's reading my paper, so she's going to reach out to me, hopefully, and we're going to talk about that. And maybe one of these, I'll have her on and see if she's had any regrets. And I don't think she has. I think she's one of the very few that has been very comfortable in her decisions. But again, she was very informed. We're talking about somebody who's super, super duper smart. And I just don't think that applies to children that are going to be 11, 12, 13 years of age. So they're not going to be fully informed as of, somebody like Nadia.
Affirmation surgery is the removal of an ovary, uterus, penis, or testes.
Yes, like I said, removing perfectly good body parts.
Yeah. I mean, again, why if you're a female and you're born biologically female and you want to become male, if you have a bilateral hysterectomy where they remove the uterus and the fallopian tubes, that's internal, right? I mean, you're removing something internal to you that you don't even see. It's psychological. You're saying, I have this in my body and it's causing me psychological problems. And instead of treating the mind, you say, you know what, we're going to remove those things. So if I say, oh, look, my heart's broken, please remove my heart. You think a doctor's going to remove that? Of course not. And again, I know that's hyperbolic. I get it. But these are our internal things. Now, of course, there's obviously arguments for external genitalia too, right? The secondary characteristics and even primary characteristics. But I mean, to have your breast removed, these are things that a born female might want later on. They might want to have kids later on. They're gonna say, hey, look, right now I feel like a boy, but 20, 30 years from now I may want kids. Why would you remove the functionality to have children on a child especially when it's internal? I mean, what if somebody has to be telling them this? Oh, by the way, yes, and I understand people learn biology, right? You're going to learn that in biology. Hang on, fix my mic real quick. That women, people that are born biologically female generally have, a uterus and the fallopian tubes and the ovaries. And we're not talking about intersex conditions right now. I'm not going to get into that. We're not going to talk about people with ovitestes and things of that nature and males that are born with female tissues. Those are so minute of percentages, and they really just distract from the conversation. And I think a lot of people that are born intersex don't want to be involved in the gender discussion, and I don't blame them. So, and I know nobody's going to do that right now. Nobody's talking about it, but just to let people know that the intersex is not of relevance. We don't see a lot of transgender people that are intersex, right? Most transgenders are born a particular biological sex, and then through time have come to the belief that they're the opposite sex. And we're going to get into the philosophy of that here very shortly.
So that you could be physically aligned with the gender in which you identify.
Yeah, just keep on chopping off body parts. I'm sure that'll fix your psychological issues.
And right now, gender affirmation surgery is reserved only for those who are 18 years of age or older.
Okay.
That's not true. That is absolutely not true. There are children having gender affirmation surgery as young as 12. Absolutely not true. And again, as an adult, as an informed adult, there's a whole different thing opens up to you when you're an adult. Just like when you're 21, you can drink. But under 21, you can't drink alcohol in California, right? But other states, you might be able to drink at 18. 3.2 beer. In some states, you can drink at 18. In the military, you can drink at 18. 3.2 beer, but you can't drink, hard alcohol. But those are arbitrary limits we've decided as a society. And 18 has been the line we've had for demarcation of when you are considered to be an adult to make your own decisions. Do I think that age is old enough? Not really. I could guarantee you most of us when we were 18 didn't know shit from Shinola. Right? I was in the military at 18, man. And yeah, I mean, I was learning a lot, and I thought I knew a lot about science, and I probably had a respectful amount for that age. But it wasn't until I went through college and nuke school, and I was like, oh man, there's a lot more to this, right? And I knew there would be. I didn't think there wouldn't be. I was looking forward to learning it. But it wasn't until, I don't know, late 30s, early 40s maybe, where I was like, man, I'm an adult. I swear to God, you're really, maybe 35 when I had my kid. Then you're like, oh my God, I really am an adult, right? I don't know about you guys, but when did you guys think that you guys were an adult? When do you feel like you were adulting, right? It wasn't until I had my kid, had my house. And I had to say, it had to be within, the 30s, late 30s. And even then, I think that I wasn't fully able to say, hey, look, man, I'm a grown man until probably 40. I don't know. I mean, and again, that sounds weird, and I know people are going to run with that, and that's fine. Let them troll. But I really do think that most of us that are in our 50s look back and go, man, even as a 40, man, I still was a kid at heart. I really was. I still would like to go out and party, have beers with my friends, hang out kind of stuff. And I'm sorry to hear about your father passing away, and that will make somebody grow up really fast, right? I was 40, I'm going to say 45, 46, I guess, when my dad passed away. So I was definitely an adult by then. But, it is arbitrary. And yes, some people do feel like an adult. There are some 16 and 17-year-olds that can get emancipated because their childhood experience has made them grow up very fast. So there's no one size fits all. So we're taking this average mean and we're saying, look, we cannot reasonably come to a legal standard of what it means to be an adult because it could range anything from 16, it could be 35. So we're just going to have this arbitrary line of demarcation, and that has been established to be 18 in society. Willie Mays, 23 and 2 kids. Oh, brother, yeah. I don't know if that's adulting or just, damn. Yeah, I just couldn't imagine having 2 kids at 23, man. I would just get out of the Navy at 23. The last thing I would want would be 2 kids.
So
but good on you, man. Seriously, good on you being a dad to them.
Was a lie. I mean, I even know someone who had gender surgery way before 18.
Yeah, it's a lie. She was
She's
lying.
Chloe Cole, and she's gathered lots of data proving that this happens all the time. She personally has since detransitioned, of course. Well, as far as you can detransition after surgery, that is. I mean, some things are irreparable. Anyway, you can check her out on Twitter if you're interested.
However, for someone like Avery, would it be more beneficial for her to undergo gender affirmation surgery before the age of 18?
No.
Hey, moron.
No.
Fucking moron.
No.
Yeah, why don't we just let kids buy alcohol and join the military? We put limits on kids because they're fucking stupid and they don't know what they want.
Well, that's true, but let me make it clarify. You can't join the military as a kid. 17. I joined the military at 17. So there are some exceptions, right? Again, I'm not an absolutist. I think that when we have these arbitrary limits, there are certain exceptions, just like contractual law. You have to be 18 to sign a contract, but there are certain limits or exceptions. There, you can, at 17 or 16 even, if you sign a contract for like a lease or something like that, you could be legally obligated to pay that off. Okay, so there are some exceptions, but generally speaking, you have to be 18 for things. But there's a reason for this. Do we want a child that's 14 to say, hey, look, I want to have gender reassignment surgery? No, of course not. It is ridiculous. And as UNDOOMED points out, they're children, and children do stupid things. First of all, a lot of them want to please their parents. They want to please their friends. They want to please the societal aspect. They want to fit in. And you have all these trans activists out there, as Hereticals pointed out when he was in live chat, going, hey, look, do it. Become trans. Become one of us. There's a lot of peer pressure. And again, I'm not talking in absolutes. There's no one size fits all when it comes to this. But to ignore the fact that there are going to be children that are going to be pushed into having radical gender reassignment surgery at early ages because of peer pressure, parent pressure, to say that doesn't happen is not just disingenuous. It is disgusting because they're ignoring the fact that it does happen. It's not just a matter of hypotheticals. It happens. We know it happens. To deny that is just absolutely ridiculous. Like he mentioned, Chloe, perfect example. Jazz Jennings, perfect example. There's peer pressure there. It's just common sense. Kids do stupid things. And I'm not saying transitioning is stupid. That's not what I'm saying. And I know somebody out there is going to be disingenuous. They're going to say, look, Steve thinks being trans is stupid. No, not at all. I am very supportive of people that are trans that are well-informed. Like my friend Nadia Yvette Chambers. I have always been supportive of her. She was the one that, like I said, introduced me to Google Hangouts. I have the utmost respect for her. She's trans. She's intelligent. I have absolutely no problem with that. So when people say, oh, somebody's transphobic, no, they're not transphobic when they're talking about the difference between an informed decision of an adult and that of a 12-year-old. They're absolutely in different categories altogether. I support trans people that are intelligent and educated and know what they're getting themselves in for. That's fine. If you're sitting across from Blair White, you're not going to call Blair White a he. I mean, she identifies and passes for a female, but she's so aware that she was born male. She's never denied she's biologically male. Same thing with Buck Adams. Buck was born genetically female, fully female, and then transitioned male. Of course, you're going to call Buck he, right? Because I'm not going to have to look at their genitalia for me to say, okay, this is what I'm looking at that I would expect to see as far as somebody who is going to be feminine or male or female, because this is how society views things. And it sucks that it is an external viewpoint. I get that. I really is. But that's society. That's the only way we can operate. I could think inside myself that I have some kind of animal spirit and I'm actually a dog. That doesn't mean people have any obligation to treat me like a dog and give me a doggy bowl and take me for walks. It just doesn't. No matter how much I believe I'm a dog, I am a human being. No matter what my belief is, it doesn't change that. And again, we're going to get into the philosophy of that in the real soon. I haven't even touched the philosophy aspect of this yet. I'm just getting through the video.
Is the age of majority, and many states have laws that prevent sterilization or the permanent removal of reproductive capability.
Good.
They were turned into eunuchs.
Yeah, but not enough. And they're trying to change that
However,
as well.
These laws were made at a time in which transgender adults could not easily get medical or surgical treatment. And therefore, these laws were made when people like Avery were not being considered.
Yes, because back then people knew that kids have faces that they grow out of. I don't know why this is so hard to understand. Kids...
Yeah, I agree with him on that. Kids have phases. Again, you notice how this doctor, and I don't even know her name, nor do I care. But you notice she jumps from the time Avery was born, that they have already identified this child to be the opposite sex, goes through, high school and schooling as like the opposite sex. And then she just jumps to like, oh, well, what these adults didn't get the care that they needed. She's trying to pigeonhole the gender reassignment for children that is significantly different than what it would be for an adult. Significantly. I mean, matter of fact, there's just not enough to work with even as some of these kids have had reassignment surgery. That's what happened with Jax Jennings, I believe her name is. She transitioned as a child, like, I don't know, like, what was she? 6, 7, 8 years old or something like that. That's just mind blowing. To have a 6-year-old's genitalia inverted and think there's nothing there to make a cavity. It's the fact we even have to just talk about something like that is disturbing enough. And again, if you're an adult, I'm going to have a different viewpoint. I don't think it should be done. I think there's a huge amount of complications, and I think that, again, it's very similar to cutting off your arm just because you don't like your arm. But there might be some people where it works for them. Okay, I'm willing to grant that. I'm willing to grant that, just even arguendo for adults. But we're talking about children here, and that's the problem that I and so many other have. Billboard Chris, who I follow on Twitter, I mean, he might be against adults doing it as well. I don't know. But I know he's definitely against kids doing it. He's against kids being pressured into having irreversible radical surgeries that they're not possibly capable of understanding the ramifications for. And I stand by that. I am affirming that I stand by kids not being even able to have these types of choices because they're kids and kids do stupid stuff. And I'm not saying, again, a kid making a decision to be trans is stupid. That is not what I'm saying. Please don't misrepresent me. If you put in my comment section, you think that's what I'm saying, then you're just going to be removed because that is not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that the plasticity of a 12-year-old's mind until they're 25 is still forming, still becoming developed along the lines of basically both their genetics, both their hormonal, and both their influential from outside influence and societal and nurturing. The surgery has been done under 12. Jax Jennings was, I believe, 8 years old, if I'm not mistaken. I mean, you can look it up, but look up how old was Jax when she had her surgery. And even then, 12 is way too young. 12 is way too young. So, Jazz Jennings. I'm sorry, not Jax. Jazz Jennings. Okay, she had her first surgery at 17, but she started having stuff done, I believe, at 12? She didn't have her surgery until she was 17. But when did she get on hormone replacement? or puberty blockers. She was just at high school age, so 14 when she started taking puberty blockers. So she didn't have a surgery done. But she definitely had puberty blockers when she was just getting into high school. 11. She started taking male puberty, trying to go through male puberty at age 11 because she was born biologically male. So at 11, she started having hormone blockers. Now, okay, she didn't have surgery until she was 17. But even still, 12 is way too young. I don't think she's as happy as she makes herself out to be. Again, I'm not trying to like put myself, out there to say I can speak for her, obviously. And by the way, my mic is falling down here. 1 second. But I mean, you definitely can see that her mom treats her like just so evil to her. I mean, it seems to all come from the mother. And we don't know what she's going to be like later on. And now she's asexual. She says she has no sex drive and she's asexual and her genitalia is not what she expected to be. She has said that, right? Because again, she probably wasn't fully informed, and again, 17-year-old girls dislike their bodies. I don't think I've ever dated a girl that had been fully comfortable in their body, but women generally have greater dislike for flaws in their body than men do, I think, personally. I think everybody does, don't get me wrong. But especially a teenager, teen angst,
Have always done things to shock and get attention. 20 years ago, that meant some bad tattoos or some ridiculous piercings. Nothing life-altering. You,
right,
on the other
agree.
hand, want to cut off their genitals. Do you even listen to yourself?
And as I
It's
treat
barbaric.
Avery, someone who identified as a preschooler,
You cannot be trans when you're a preschooler, for Christ's sake.
Yeah, what does that even mean? And again, once I get through this video, I'll start talking about the philosophy aspect of it from my perspective. But what does it even mean to be trans as a preschooler? I mean, a preschooler can identify differently. If your child is born biologically male and they identify more female or feminine, they want to wear a dress to school, I couldn't give a rat's ass. Let them wear a dress. And people say, well, they might be mocked. It's like that. Well, you know what? Teach the kids then. First of all, they shouldn't be mocking anybody. But if you want to express yourself differently, knock yourself out. If you're a kid and you want to go to school and you want to wear a dress, I couldn't care less. You want to wear high heels, knock yourself out. It's expression. Let them experiment. There's nothing wrong with that. There's absolutely nothing wrong with a kid experimenting on what he wants or she wants to wear to school at all, because that's not irreversible. Thank you, Edward. I appreciate it. That's not irreversible. That's a learning experience. They may say, you know what? I'm growing out of this. I know people that were goth when they were kids, right? They're not goth now. They have nothing to do with goth. But can you imagine if they're a goth as a teenager and they say, hey, look, I want to permanently become goth. I want to change my looks where I can never get this white makeup off me. I can never get these piercings out of me. Now, tattoos are different. Some people have regrets on that too. There's tattoo removal. But can you imagine if they were like, I'm goth and I'm always going to be goth? No. Come on. That's just ridiculous.
and is getting treatment as an adolescent, is the surgical world ready for the changes that are to come?
The fuck kind of ominous shit is that?
Yeah,
You're going to
that's
start
like-
operating on them as soon as they're born?
Currently, I don't.
Yeah, that's not hyperbolic either. I think this doctor would be like, you know what, your child was born biologically male. Oh, you wanted a daughter? Snip, snip. We'll fix that for you. If that's not eugenics, what is? May not be race related, but I mean, still the principle is kind of similar, right? Tailor make your baby. You want a baby with blue eyes? We'll do genetic changing, editing. We'll have your baby with blue eyes. We could probably do that now. We could do genetic editing where we can have tailor-made babies. But hell, you know what? You got a boy, but you know what? We're going to make her a girl. And don't think China wouldn't do that. Only the opposite, right? They don't want girls because they have overpopulation. They want boys. So if China developed a procedure for gender reassignment for babies that were born female, they're like, yeah, you know what? We have too many females. We're going to reassign and surgically alter your baby to be male. That's frightful. That's frightful. It's so funny you bring up Kimamaki, about circumcision of newborns. And I'm going to say this, Kimamaki. I'm going to say this. And I'm almost certain that the shit that this is going to start is beyond my imagination. For me, what I'm about to tell you, Kimomaki. I'd be very surprised if it doesn't. It may not. It may not. But if you don't change your positions every so often, if you don't reevaluate your beliefs, even your most fundamental beliefs, then are you a real critical thinker? Way back when, and I want you to pay attention. Everybody pay attention to this. This is not related to this video, but I think this is important because Kimomaki brought this up. Way back when, I would argue that the parents have a right to circumcise their baby. People know I'm Jewish, therefore you can figure out what that means. And it wasn't a hill I was going to die on per se, right? It wasn't like I'm advocating for circumcision. That was not that. It was just that I felt, from a cultural point of view, that it was the parents' decision to circumcise their baby. I even lost a few maybe friends over that. I know I definitely had one person block me who got really angry. His name was Blue. Really angry with that. But I got to tell you, I've had to really sit down and reevaluate many things over the years. This is going back, I don't know, 8 years, 10 years, I don't know, a long time ago. And I've had to think long and hard about consistency about my beliefs. People that know me know that I do ponder a lot of things. I'll call up, one of my friends, and we're just talk about philosophy and talk about the universe, especially like after an edible or something, right? But, I really had to say, am I being consistent in my beliefs? And I've come to the conclusion that I think circumcision should not be a thing. I have changed my position on that. And it's not easy to say that. Again, changing your position on something is not easy because most of us get so ingrained and so locked into a position, even though this was not something that I really, again, advocated for. It's just, I would say it's parents' choice. But after spending all these programs and learning about transgender stuff, I had to think to myself, am I being consistent here? And I felt like I was being inconsistent in my ideology. And so as of right now, I think I've changed my position and that I have to, for the sake of consistency, be against circumcision. Right. And yes, James, I wanted I wanted you to get a vasectomy because I didn't want the children that you have growing up to anything look like you. Do you blame me for that? Do you blame me for that? That's all I'm saying. That's all I'm going to say on that. Tom says I want to be a vampire as a child, right? Again, children grow out of this. But to get back to the whole, circumcision things, I have to be consistent. I think that one day we'll move past that, and I think that we'll have a society where circumcision will be under the same guise as removing healthy tissue. So, give me flack for it. Go ahead, leave a comment, whatever. Say, oh look, Steve, is inconsistent. He's changed his position. No, I don't think that's inconsistent at all. I think that changing your position is a sign of growth. But I had to really sit there and evaluate myself. That is this a consistent position? And I felt like I had an inconsistent ideology or ontological framework there about, or epistemological framework. So, yeah, it wasn't a hill we're dying on, that's for sure. But as of right now, I am against circumcision. So I've changed my views on it. It can happen, right? And this is because of reasonable argumentation. This is because I've listened to people give me reasonable argument. It wasn't like I was saying, hey, look, I will never change my position on this. I wasn't intransigent from it. There are some positions that I just can't see myself ever changing position on, right? Obviously, my whole, lacktheist position, oh, yeah, I'll die in that hill. You're damn right I'll die in that hill. But I never was going to die on the hill of circumcision. And having measured, reasonable discussions with people changed my mind. So it can happen, but you have to be able to have the ability to change somebody's mind by having facts, evidence, and reasoned, measured argumentation, and logic is always good too. That's why the people that come at me that don't have any of those and then say, oh, Steve's such an asshole. Steve won't change his mind. Steve's a dick. Because they came at me sideways and they didn't present to me anything of value. The people that I know that I care about and my friends, they'll still present to me argued stuff, and we may disagree. We may never see eye to eye on stuff. But I respect them. I respect somebody to say, hey, Steve, I disagree with you. Let me tell you why, and we could talk for hours. Nothing wrong with that. And the people that disagree with me on the whole atheism, agnosticism thing, very few people I know that are like close friends disagree with me. Either they agree with me or they don't care, right? They're apathetic to it or they agree with me. Because I don't know any philosopher or logician or mathematician that disagrees with me on any of that stuff. I just don't. If there is, I'd love to talk to them. But anyways. All right, back to the video. Let's walk through this video because I still want to get to the philosophy of this stuff. I haven't got to the philosophy yet, and we're already well over an hour into this.
I don't think so. But if we start thinking about these changes today, I think we can make a difference.
So in other words, you want to keep desensitizing people to this until you can get away with it.
And in fact, as transgender people are more openly being able to seek therapy,
that's too fast.
The demand for transgender surgery has increased by 5-fold over the past 5 years.
What does that tell you? What does that tell you? 5-fold over the last 10 years or whatever it is. That tells me that's a social contagion. That is something societal based. That is because society has been wanting the people to change rather than it having organic, natural changes amongst itself. It is people that are pushing this ideology. That's why there's people more asking for it. It's ideological. It's not physical. It's not genetics. It's not medical advancements. It is a strict, critical gender theory ideological movement that is causing this.
Look, if this happened in any other area of medicine, people would be like, whoa, there's like 5 times as much cancer in this area. Maybe we should do something to prevent that. But you just think it's great. This is a psychological contagion. And mutilating children is not a good thing. You absolute clown.
But, by the way, I love this scene. Blazing Saddles is one of the greatest movies of all time. And this scene right here between Gene Wilder and, what was his name? Clifford Little? Clint Little? God dang it. This was unscripted. This was completely unscripted. He didn't know that Gene Wilder was going to tell him, say something like, morons. Freaking hilarious. Cleveland Little. That was his name, wasn't it? Love this movie. This movie definitely shat on society and societal views of race and things of that nature, and it did it in such a comedic way that was absolutely Cleveland Little. Yes, I'm sorry, Cleveland Little. They both have passed, and both of them were brilliant in this freaking movie, man. Cleveland Little. But yeah, this was unscripted, and I got to tell you, man, if you haven't seen Blazing Saddles, you've missed out because that is one of the greatest all-time movies. But this scene here where he's just like, he's like, simple folk, morons.
18 is the age in which minors are protected from making permanent decisions about their reproductive health, because the thought is then at 18 they can decide what they would like to do.
This is a good thing. I don't understand why you don't want to protect kids.
However,
no, there is no however.
If as soon as pubertal blockers were added and then estrogen was added to her therapy, Avery's testes never developed. In fact, she does not make any sperm. And her reproductive capability to be a biological parent has been eliminated.
You'd think she'd continue this by saying, wow, that's sad. This person will never have children.
Yeah. I mean, I have to, again, agree with you, Undoomed here. She's literally saying this child has become sterile because of these puberty blockers. She's no longer able to produce sperm, right? She was never able to produce, ovaries. She never have ovaries produce ovum, so she couldn't be inseminated, but she could have inseminated. She could at least have spermatozoa that had the genetic material in it to reproduce, whether naturally or artificially. It doesn't matter. At least the ability there. That ability is completely gone. And I don't know how she thinks that's a good thing.
But no, she's going to turn this around into an argument for more drugs and more surgery. Can you fucking believe it?
Her testes are non-functional. And in medicine, don't we often recommend the removal of non-functional organs, like an appendix?
I swear to God, when I heard that, I thought it was the dumbest thing I've ever heard a medical professional say. The only time we remove an appendix is when it's inflamed and there's a reason to take it out. Doctors don't do unnecessary surgeries. We don't go around saying, hey, look, your appendix is a vestigial organ, therefore we are going to remove it because when you're born, we're just going to take out everybody's appendix. No, they remove them when they need to be removed. Okay? And the testes here being atrophied is because of the medical intervention that they did. I mean, that makes absolutely no sense. But can you imagine, we don't, even like wisdom teeth. Wisdom teeth, mine were taken out, but mine were taken out because they would have caused impactions. But we don't say when you were born, we're going to remove your appendix. We're going to remove your wisdom teeth. Well, they wouldn't have come in yet, but you don't get what I'm saying. You don't remove something just because it's no longer functioning. You remove it because there's a reason to, because there's a complication that's going to affect something else. If you have an appendix and it inflames and it bursts and ruptures, you could die. You probably will die. There's a reason to remove them for that point. But we don't remove healthy tissue.
I mean, I'm kind of speechless at this point. You caused the organs to become useless.
You caused it.
You did the harm. This is like your friend crashing your car and coming back saying, hey, at least you don't have to pay for repairs ever again.
What are you, the village idiot?
So therefore, does it make sense for Avery to wait until she's 18?
Yes, she might have gotten over it by then.
Or
Yes,
should
it
older
does.
adolescents be allowed to have surgery before the age of 18?
No, absolutely not. When you're 18, you can do whatever the fuck you want, but until that time, you do not cut off your genitals.
The transgender patient may be one of the most well-informed patients.
No,
What?
they're not.
You just pulled
No, they're
that out
not.
of your ass. Citation
not.
needed.
Who else has had years of psychological evaluation, months of medical therapy, and has thought of this one procedure for so long?
Anyone who has a serious illness? This is bullshit.
Yeah, I think it's bullshit
So rather
too.
than to use strict age limits for eligibility, why not use the number of years in which one has lived in their affirmed gender?
Oh,
Because her
God.
brain hasn't fully developed, and as a doctor,
Exactly.
you should know this.
Yeah, that's so true. The brain is still plastic. There's still plasticity there. It doesn't matter how long they lived in their affirmed gender, because their brain will change. There's been a lot of people that eventually realize, you know what? I was not trans. I was just gay. I mean, this is why the gay community has been so up in arms about the trans community, because they're like, you know what? If I went through that phase, not me personally, but speaking as some people that I've seen what they write on Twitter and talking to me, they went through those phases. So they're like, I went through that phase. I wanted to wear a dress. I wanted to wear high heel shoes. I mean, I did the drag thing, but you know what? I'm not a female. I'm a man. I just happen to like drag, or I happen to like men. What's wrong with that? Absolutely nothing. Nothing's wrong with that. If you want to dress drag, go nuts. Have at it. I couldn't care less. If you want to date men, date men. I'm pleased. And matter of fact, I wish more men would date more men. Leave more women for the rest of us. I couldn't care less. If you're gay, that's who you are. That's you. There's nothing wrong with being gay. And for some reason now we're treating it as, oh, there's something wrong with the way you're looking at the world, that you are having these feelings that you might be attracted to the same sex. You're wearing high heels. You know what? You're not gay or effeminate. You're trans. They're being told this.
And insurances and laws should consider older adolescents in getting gender affirmation surgery.
No, they really shouldn't, you asshole. See my previous argument.
Now, these surgeries are not simple surgeries.
Yeah, no shit, Sherlock. That's the understatement
Yeah, because
of the year.
they don't know what they're doing in these
complex
surgeries.
that require very specific pre- and post-operative care.
Yeah, for
And multiple
life.
surgeries.
I didn't
For
realize it was
life.
possible for a woman to be unusually irritable.
In fact, from the transition of male to female, you need to have up to 6 months of electrolysis before the procedure. And then afterwards, daily exercises so that you can keep the grafted tissue functional.
Yeah, you've been given an open wound, and the body is going to fight to try to close it.
By
Yeah, they're putting they put them on the medical system for the rest of their lives. That's what they're doing. They're putting them on the system for the rest of their lives. And again, as an adult, it's apples and oranges. We're strictly talking about children at this point. This is what the TED Talk's about. This is what she's talking about. We're strictly talking about kids at this point.
having an older adolescent have the support of their parents to receive this procedure and afterwards have the best surgical results, we're able to prevent corrective surgeries down the road.
That's not even true. Without puberty, your penis is not going to grow to its full size, and you have nothing to invert.
Yeah,
you
exactly.
yourself
And
went
that's
over that
happened.
just a few minutes ago.
That's
So
not
why not
hypothetical. That
allow
has happened.
older adolescents before they leave the home to have these procedures?
Because, and try to follow me on this, they're too...
That's what happened with Jazz Jennings. She was 17, but things had not been fully developed yet. She had been put on puberty blockers since the age of 11. So Jazz Jennings had put on puberty blockers since the age of 11. Things didn't develop normally that they would have had in a normal adolescent male puberty. And then when they tried to do the surgery at 17, there wasn't much there to work with, leaving her asexual, leaving her psychologically damaged, so to speak. She suffers from depression. She suffers from inability to have formative relationships with people. I've watched her talk about this. So when somebody says, "Oh, she's happy," she doesn't seem happy to me. But again, I'm not trying to say who's happy, who's not. But when somebody says, "Look, they have no sex drive, they're asexual," and they're going to say they're happy, I'm just going to go, "Well, how would you know what your happiness is if you had not made those decisions to make those permanent life-altering decisions at such a young age.
Young!
And be able to live authentically.
That's such a massive cliche. What the fuck does that even mean?
Until recently,
Well,
it was
it's puberty
not
blockers
easy
and
for
estrogen. And
transgender
she was at
adolescents
both.
to
She had puberty
receive
blockers
pivotal
and hormone replacement
Translation.
therapy.
Until recently, people were sane.
Previously, they had to undergo the programmed puberty that they were to have, and that caused psychological distress.
Going through a perfectly normal biological function causes psychological distress, yo.
You've caused
Yeah,
me
that's
considerable
weird.
mental distress, Charlie.
You know, I mean, we're hardwired to go through that. I'm sorry, but we are humans, and we are just. I'm going to use the word designed. Don't get all crazy. It is designed. It's called teleonomics. We are designed by nature to go through puberty. It's not teleological. It doesn't require an intelligence. Doesn't require God. But there is design in nature. This is what Darwin gave us, the ability to understand that some things are designed by nature. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's just not an intelligence design. It has the appearance of intelligence design. It's called teleonomic versus teleologic. But we don't have, and I don't have an issue with people saying things are designed. My hand is designed to grasp this cup. I got an opposable thumb. It's designed to do that. Doesn't require God to do that. Nature designed that through multiple reiterations of species and trial and error and selective pressures.
Helps out.
So imagine you go through your first puberty,
Modern day
and
debates.
then you get to
Trigger!
do it again a second time, but with the opposite sex hormones.
Yeah, this was
now
almost
that
over.
is even more distressful.
That's not how it works. You
Yeah.
don't get two
You
puberties.
don't get two-
You get one. And if you start
don't get
getting
two
hormones, you
puberties.
don't get a second one.
However, one may argue that being able to have your first puberty and have your organs fully mature is the actual advantage, because now sperm and egg could be preserved, and you could preserve your biological parenting.
Yeah, that is absolutely true. Now watch this
Artificially.
woman turn that into a disadvantage.
Yeah,
However,
artificially, sure.
this does come at a cost. You're now going to need more corrective surgeries, such as facial redefining surgery, shaving of the Adam's apple, and even top surgery. And all of that is even more distressful.
These people treat having kids like it's only something weirdos want.
Yeah.
For someone like Avery, who's always lived her entire life in the identified gender, puberty is going to out her, and that will also be leading to psychological distress.
Yeah, like I said, so what if you can't have kids? Nobody normal wants that.
So help me if I wake up and I'm singing soprano.
Embryologic development follows a very specific pattern, and then the two differentiate into
almost
male
over
and
there. I'm
female
gonna talk
organs.
about this, the
But this initial
philosophy
analogy
for a
and
minute.
similarity in tissue is important, and that is what doctors today use so that from the male genitalia, a vagina can be created. And
Which doesn't work
afterwards,
too well.
even physicians cannot tell the difference.
And that's an outright lie. When I was researching some of this stuff, and I use the word term research very, very, very loosely. Okay, I'm not researching it. Okay, I'm just looking into. I shouldn't use the word research because it's not research. None of us do research. Okay, none of us do research in any kind of clinical aspect when it comes to this. At least I really don't. I mean I look into. Okay, so don't hit me on that. I'm not doing any actual research. But I mean, when I'm looking at this stuff, yeah, trust me, you can tell the difference. Absolutely. There's nobody in the world that can say, oh, look at that. Look at that. They're identical. Nope. Not even remotely close. Not even remotely close.
It's just a blatant lie.
It's a blatant lie.
I did the research. I saw the photos. There's no way.
He says research too. I'm going to call him out on that. Same way I called myself out. I hate that word research. People say, I did the research on it. No, you didn't. You just looked into it. But I understand why he's using that. And I'm going to give him a pass on it. But we all know he's using it very colloquially. But it's just something that I'm going to try to avoid using that term.
Way anyone who's seen the real thing would be fooled for a second.
Parents often ask me, what will it be like for my child or teen as an adult? Honestly, I don't know.
You don't even have the confidence to say it'll be great? The fuck is this? Anyway, that's it. I can't take it anymore. So thanks for watching and see you next time.
All right, thank you, Undoomed. All right, so let me kind of let me take this off for a second. All right, so let me talk about the philosophy of this real quick. So there's certain types of things in philosophy that deals with what's called essentialism. Gender essentialism is more of the line of a position that there's certain things that make a woman, womanness, so to speak. There's something that's fundamental about the universe that when we speak of a woman, that makes them a woman, an essential nature of that woman. The problem with gender essentialism, or things of that nature, gender realism, is that a lot of these things come from societal constructs. That is true. There's a biological aspect of male and feminine where we are born either male or female. There's no dispute in biology of that. I'm sorry. There's just none. I've never read a single textbook in science that differentiates anything different than male or female of a species for humans. Nothing. Nowhere. We're the only primate in existence where we start talking about gender as a different aspect of human from sex. And honestly, I don't have a problem with that in a different domain of discourse. The problem is that when you start conflating the domains of discourse from the science, which has some realism to it, okay? There's an objective facts of the matter that exist in science. Gravity exists whether you like it or not. The earth is not flat whether you like it or not. These are not up for opinions, okay? They're scientific observations that have been verified repeatedly that we know objectively. If I go look at the shape of the earth and you go look at the shape of the earth, we're going to come up with the same conclusion. If you're not an idiot, that is not flat, right? And so gender realism to me is something that it doesn't really exist as far as biological. Now, second wave feminism came along and said, look, gender realism is just wrong, because they were saying that the gender was a social construct of the 50s and 60s and saving the 70s, where women were more subservient, and there was these cast roles for them, that it was the husband and the male that took care of the family. The women stayed home, took care of the kids, made the dinners. That's how it was in the 50s and 60s. I'm not saying that was right. It wasn't. But that is historical fact of how it was. And so feminists, especially second wave feminists, said, look, we want to change these gender norms. We want to get away from this. A woman has every right to go out and get a job and make just as much money as the male. And they're absolutely right on that. I supported that kind of feminism. Absolutely. If you're a male or a female and you both have the skill set to do the damn job, get paid equally. That glass ceiling should have been shattered long time ago. And so they're saying that the gender realism is wrong because the gender construct is a social construct. That's what they mean by social construct. They're saying, look, these are the things that, because of societal norms that we attribute to femininity, pink, dresses, cultural type aspects. And that's very much true. Those are gender norms that are societal based. But there are also realist positions. There are also things about biology that's real. And that doesn't make gender realism true. It just means you still have to look at some of the real components. A male that is born with a penis cannot have menstruation. They cannot have ovum. They cannot have birth. It cannot give birth, no matter what happens biologically. And somebody's going to argue, well, transhumanism, artificial. We're not talking about any of that. Okay, that's so stupid. Biologically speaking, a man that is born perfectly, what you would say is a typical male, is not going to be able to give birth. Period. So the sex is immutable. The biological sex is immutable. And what's happening is the people that are in the gender theory activism, they're trying to relate the social aspects of gender as described in gender theory or social studies, which are perfectly fine to do. I don't have a problem with that. But they're trying to conflate it with the scientific realism of certain things, the biological facts. And that's where I think people have a problem. Because even if you accept essentialism, then you have to say is, where does essentialism come from? What makes a woman a woman? What is it about a woman that makes them a woman? Right? Because if I look at functionalism, right, I'm going to say, what makes this cup a cup? Right? I can say, well, I drink from it. It has a teleos, a function, to serve as a cup. Okay. But does that mean there's something called cupness? Is there something in the universe that exists by necessity that makes that a cup? No, I don't think so. Now, I do think there's some things by necessity that makes certain things when it comes to mathematics. That's called Platonic realism. I do think that Platonic realism makes more sense over nominalism. And this is where we're getting into philosophy. I used to tend to nominalism, but I think it makes more sense to have Platonic realism, at least as far as science and mathematics. Sorry about that. Science and mathematics. The reason being is because you cannot have science without math. And if you don't treat math quantities, you don't treat sets, you don't treat math as having a real component to them, then it just doesn't make sense to be able to say something is true in science. It just doesn't make sense. Now, that doesn't mean that there exists some kind of Platonic realm where these numbers exist. No, it's not Platonism like Plato. It's mathematical Platonism where these numbers are at least treated as real. You know, the real numbers are called real, right? They're called the reals. And now those reals, you have, the integers, and now the integers. You have the positive integers, and of course you have the rational numbers and the real and the complex numbers. The reals are a subset of the complex. So when we're talking about treating things as real, it just makes sense to. But that works because we do so because there's functionality to treat mathematics as real. As far as like gender, I don't see a reason to treat gender as real as far as gender realism. Same reason why we have race realism. I'm not a race realist by any stretch of imagination, right? I think that race realism is BS. I think humans are humans. Now, there are some differentiations. Obviously, as somebody who's Jewish, we have testing for Cytax disease. Blacks have higher propensity for sickle cell anemia. This is fine. This is understood because of genetically lineage, right? But that doesn't mean that my race is any different than a black person. We're the same human race. Race realism is not a thing. It's descriptive. Descriptive only. If somebody robs a store, you're going to say, can you identify that person? And we're going to use descriptions about that person from an external vantage point, not the internal, but the external. They're going to say that, oh yeah, he's tall, he's short, he's fat, he's skinny, he's black, he's white. These are descriptors. No matter what that individual feels, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what the individual who committed the crime thinks they have. They can think they're the skinniest person on the earth, but weigh 500 pounds. Or they can think they're, Eugene Clooney. How do I name Eugene Clooney? I mean, she's clearly anorexic. Anybody's looking at her. She's unhealthy anorexic, like almost ready to die anorexic. And I can't imagine if she makes it to another year. But she's probably thinking, oh, I'm perfectly fine. That's her belief state. But we don't go by the belief state of the individual when we're describing something. It wouldn't make sense to do so. I mean, look at like Eminem. Eminem is a great rapper. I like Eminem. I love his music. He may identify as black, but he's not black. He's never experienced what it's like to be black. He doesn't know what it means to grow up black. He couldn't. He just couldn't. So when we're talking about people being born in the wrong body, I agree with Bilber Chris. I don't know what that means. We are who we are, and then that's part genetic, that's part nurture, that's part nature. But I could never, ever, ever, ever identify what it's like to be a bat. If you read Thomas Nagel, right? What does it mean to be a bat? What's it like? What's the batness? Eugenia Clooney, yes. And so I think a lot of it is just this need to want to categorize certain people by their perception of themselves rather than the perception of other people. That unfortunately is how society is ran. I don't see any other way. We all can't get what we want. We all can't say, look, I'm absolutely beautiful. You have to treat me as such, or else. It just wouldn't work that way, especially when it's descriptive. What makes us human is, and I just had this discussion with somebody not too long ago, but what makes us human is descriptives. We're in a set of things that are Homo sapiens sapiens, and what makes that set are properties that say, okay, look, this person's a primate. This person's in Cercopithecida. This person's in Hominidae. This person is bipedal. This being or whatever is chemoheterotropic. This person is multicellular. They're an animal. We have all these properties. These properties that describe the set of things that are human, and we could make all the properties. We could say, look, if you subscribe or if you're described by all these properties, we're going to call you human. And then in the set of humans, we could say all things that are descended from Pan prior, which is the last primate from chimpanzees, us. Or, well, that'd be too non-specific because that would include Australopithecus. But we can definitely say, humans are categorized by these lineages by phylogeny. That's called intentional states. If I say an intentional set, that means I can describe the set by not having every single element or extension listed in that set, right? If I said all the presidents of the United States, that's an intentional set. But if I list all the presidents who ever existed, that'd be extensional. But both of them describe the same set. right? Whether I say all presidents or if I say each one of them individually, then it describes the same set, right? Same thing with states. I can say, I can list all the states: Alabama, Colorado, Washington, Oregon, California. I can name every single 50 states, and I can say, here's my set of all 50 states. That's an extensional set. Or I can just say all the states in America. That's an intentional set. But they don't both reference the same set. So when we're talking about humans, we're talking about beings that exist in the set of things that are human. When we talk about women, we're talking about things that are in the set of being woman. When we talk about men, we're talking about things that are in the set of being men. And that doesn't go to essentialism. It doesn't even go to functionalism. It goes to what we have described of the properties of the beings in that set, or the elements of that set, the extensional elements of that set. When I was born, it was determined I was a boy based upon physical characteristics. These are your phenotype, right? And of course, there are some people with ambiguous genitalia. Okay, let's put that to the side and just talk about a general understanding right now. And we're not talking about people that have chromosomal abnormalities. We're not talking about people that have SRY gene issues. We're not talking about people that have testosterone insensitivities. Those things are fine to discuss. That's fine. But it's not going to be of relevance, because even still, everybody that's born with an intersex condition, whether it be a genital ambiguity, or some kind of developmental problem or hormonal problem or genetic problem, all of them still fall into male or female in biology. All of them. There's no such thing as other when it comes to biology. And that's the problem, because they're trying to change what we understand about biology, and that's the pushback. Because they're leaving the realm of conceptualization and social constructivism, because that's how these things are thought about when it comes to gender in gender studies. And again, I don't have a problem with social constructivism for that. But you do not have social constructivism on scientific facts. This is not possible. And that's why I think there's been so much pushback, because people are talking past each other. People are arguing the biology, the science, and saying this is how it is. And it is. And then you have people going, no, here's other studies. But they're talking about something completely different. They're talking about social constructive elements of gender ideology. And it's perfectly fine to do that in some aspects. It really is. I don't have a problem with that. If you want to separate gender from sex, be my guest. But in biology, there really is no distinction that I can see of. There really isn't. But again, when we're talking about what makes a male, we're talking about those who can produce the small gamete. When we're talking about female, we're talking about those who can produce the large gamete. That's what we're talking about in biology. Every biology book I've ever read says male produces large gamete. Small gamete. Female produces large gamete. Females get inseminated. Males do insemination. I've never read a single solitary biology books talking about humans where that doesn't apply. Not one. Not one. And I think that's where UNDOOMED's probably coming from as well. So if I had to guess, he would probably, hopefully would agree with me on that in a scientific aspect, when we're talking about science, we have men and women. We have male and female of the species. And I've had to pull teeth with biologists, people that have biology degrees, PhDs, to get them to admit that. They're like, yes, in biology, we have the male of the species and the female species, but blah, 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 and then the other. It's like, well, no, now you've moved away from that. You can't have it both ways. And Jerry Coyne just wrote something not too long ago explaining this, saying, look, if you want to have a gender study where you're talking about various aspects of gender as a social constructivist point of view, go for it. But don't try to change fundamental aspects of biology, because that's where the pushback. And that's why people that are educated in biology a lot of them are having pushback. They're like, we're not attending your things anymore. You cannot tell us, what we've studied is wrong. That'd be like a flat earther saying, look, we want to talk about flat earth, but we're going to argue that people doing surveying is wrong. We're going to argue that, NASA never went to the moon and we want you to teach this in college. No. It doesn't work that way. Young Earth creationism is not taught in college for a reason. And, I have friends that are young Earth creationists. I got one in the live chat before, if he's still here. Young Earth creationists. Get along fantastic. Dr. Sarfati. Dr. Sarfati is a young Earth creationist. We get along just fine. And he agrees with me on the gender stuff. But, I mean, it doesn't matter. I guarantee that Dr. Jonathan Sarfati and I both agree that the earth is not flat. Guaranteed. He's not a flat earther. He'll differ and say, look, he believes it's 7,000 years old, which definitely goes against objective science. I agree with you on that. But we don't have that kind of discussion. We haven't for like 8 years. We don't talk about younger creationism any longer. Just a sore spot. But, on everything else, we seem to agree an awful lot. And I don't hold it against him that he's a young earth creationist. He doesn't advocate, as far as I know, to teach young creationism in school. Maybe he does, but if he does, I don't know about that. But yeah, I'd be very much against that. I don't want young earth creationism taught in school. If you want to teach young earth creationism as a comparative philosophy course and religion course about how people think, knock yourself out. Absolutely. I got no issue with that. I don't. I really don't. Learn how other people think. If you want to learn in a religious comparative course about people's beliefs, and they say, hey, look, there's a group of people out there that believe this. Okay. Nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with that at all. But when you're telling biologists that there are more than two sexes, there's going to be a lot of pushback. Colin Wright from Twitter, also known as Swipe Right, has a lot of pushback. Fonda Beatles, Emma, pushback. And I get along splendidly with Emma. She's going to probably be mentioned on the show here. But I respect them immensely because they're willing to stand up and say, if you want to have gender ideology, go for it. If you want to have trans, go for it. If you want to express yourself differently, go for it. But don't tell biologists that they have to accept that when it comes to the real component of gender realism. Because again, gender realism I don't think is a thing, but that doesn't mean there's not a real component to it. There is, clearly. Just like there's a real component between me being somebody who's of Caucasian as opposed to somebody who's black. There's a real component that's there's more melanin in their skin. That's an objective fact. They're darker. Objective fact. Does that mean they're any less of a person? Absolutely not. And this is a mistake that historical people made in the days of slavery. They treated people that were black as inferior. Before the feminist movement, the first and second wave feminists, when the women's suffrage and women have the right to vote, and the second wave where women's stereotypes were being crashed, they thought women were supposed to be subservient and lesser than men. And they were wrong for it. I do not accept cultural relativism. I do not accept historical relativism. They were wrong. Slavery was never justified. Slavery was never right. Ever. And that's not moral absolutism. That's actually moral universalism, which is not quite absolutism. And I do believe in objective morality. But that's only on some things. Not everything has subjective morality. Some things have clearly more subjective morality. But objective morality doesn't require everything to be objective. But there are things I believe that are just objectively wrong. And I think slavery objectively harms society as a whole. Now, some people have argued, well, back there before, the antebellum period and blah, 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 slavery helped the economy and the slave trade and people pick cotton and blah, blah. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. You're trying to justify the abuse of a human being as property for financial gain. And maybe there was short-term gains for society as far as the economic growth, but the overall social aspect of society was diminished. It was harmed. And that's real. There's harm to people when you have these things. Slavery harmed people. You cannot sit there and tell me you're a good person if you don't think slavery harms people. If you don't think there's a real component with that, when somebody has been a victim of a crime, there's a real component to that. If somebody has been stolen from, they're without the item. They've lost something. There's a real component to that. There's an objective fact to be had that person has now has nothing less than they had before. No matter what you believe, is mind dependent, as they say. That person no longer has that item. They've lost something. That is an objective fact. Now, be it a value to them or not, that's has some subjectivity, but the objective fact is they've lost something. If you don't think that a person that has been raped is not harmed, then first of all, you're just a detestable human being. But second of all, how do you deny there's a real component to that? There's absolutely a real component to all this stuff. But the problem, I think, is that when you have this person like this doctor up here trying to intertwine the ideological aspects with the real component, then you're going to have a very disjunct correspondence with each other or communication with each other or discussion. Because you're talking about very different things. This happens all the time on Twitter. This happens all the time on Facebook. This happens all the time at YouTube. People talking past each other because you have the people from the talking about the real aspect, the real effects, the real objective facts that opinions don't matter on, and then you have the things where you have more of a societal aspects that you have more of the ability to have a discussion on that's open to interpretation. And that's the problem that I see. But I definitely think that there's a real aspect. Again, with things like slavery, there's no way you can tell me it didn't cause harm to people. There's real pain there. And so I'm morally against slavery. And for somebody to say, well, it was just the culture at the time. It was just the historical time. Well, no, that doesn't mean that it was right. It means they were ignorant of the moral knowledge, the moral epistemology they were ignorant of. They didn't know it was wrong to. That doesn't justify it. It doesn't give them a pass. It doesn't mean they shouldn't be held accountable, because good people should go, hey, look, this is wrong. Whether the law allows it or not, this is wrong. For example, I was over at EKC's channel, and she had this beautiful little kitty, purring kitty. I love kitties. I love doggos too. I'm probably more of a dog than kitty, but I'm not by much. Not by much, if anything. You know what? Sometimes I might want a kitty. I don't know. Maybe I like kittens more. Who knows? But an adorable kitten. If we didn't have laws that protected animals that we have stewardship over, does that mean you have a right ethically to abuse a kitten? No, because they're dependent upon us. There's no need to harm a kitten. We can get into the whole thing with veganism and cows and things of that nature, but let's just keep it on point here. That would you abuse a kitten just because you could? Because if you would, you are a sociopath. You are a horrible freaking human being. I don't need a law to tell me that's wrong. I wouldn't need a law to tell me that's wrong. This whole gets into the whole biblical stuff. I don't need a certain laws to tell me right from wrong. But would you harm a kitten if there's no law against it? Well, most people wouldn't, because they're not shitty people. But let's say they did harm kittens years ago. Let's say they liked abusing kittens for sport. Does that mean that they were okay to do so because it's their culture? No. It just means they did not have the knowledge of the moral fact that is wrong to do so. Because somebody says it's so objective that is wrong. To harm an animal just for the sake of harming them goes against eudaimonia. It goes against grounding principles of human flourishing and decency. And if not, what else do we have morals for? But somebody would have sort of stepped up and said, you know what? We should not be torturing these kittens. Because objectively, you can know that's morally incorrect because there's harm there. But anyways, that's kind of what I want to talk about philosophy aspect of this. Is just because I don't think there's something that's maybe out there in the transcendental universe of what we describe to be womanness. But that doesn't mean there's not something that when we say the word woman, what we mean by it. A woman is in the set of things that we have described by giving properties to them of the female of the human species that has the ability to ovulate and have children and be inseminated. And we're not talking about accidental properties, because somebody's going to eventually go, well, what about women that are fertile? We're talking about the potential to be fertile. We're not talking about accidental properties, just as much as even though humans are categorized as being chemoheterotropic, multicellular, and bipedal, if you're born without legs, you're still human. That's an accidental property because you have the potential to be born with legs. But there's no human that's not chemoheterotropic. We all have the necessity to eat. We don't make our own food. All of us. That is a necessary condition for human. Bipedal is still a necessary condition for being human. But again, we're talking about the potential, not an accidental, something went wrong and you didn't be born without legs. So when we talk about what it means to be human, a lot of it is descriptive, but that again gets more into, philosophies of the human condition, which would probably be on the scope of this particular video. So I've rambled long enough. I think I made my point. I think we've talked about UNDOOMED's video and what my position is. So let me just give a summary. I think UNDOOMED's video was very good. Why? Because he didn't have to dive into it very deeply. It was basically, this woman's insane. I'm sorry, but she's just insane. To talk about children's genitalia the way she is, that just, no, so nonchalantly that, cut them off. Just snip. Give them hormone therapy. Give them puberty blockers. They'll be fine. It's just, to me, barbaric. And so when people come to me and say, hey, Steve, what's your position on these things? Again, if you're an adult, go with God, so they speak. That may or may not exist. There's discussions to be had there, but they're certainly nowhere near in the category of children. And so when I'm on Twitter and I'm talking about trans things, I'm specifically really talking about kids at this point, because I'm really sick of people saying, well, trans rights. What is it right you don't have? You have the right to go do what you want. Go do it if you want. Okay? I'm not going to talk you out of it. I'm not going to sit there and try to change your mind. I don't know what trans rights even mean at this point because it's been so watered down. I have a lot of people that I've known were trans. Some of them I still know. Some of them have turned against me. And other people because they've been so ingrained to be ideologically conditioned that if you don't agree with them 100%, you're the bad guy. They've alienated allies. And it used to be that when people would talk about this, you had people going, you can't even talk about that. We'll blacklist you if you talk about this. You're a bad person if you talk about this. But nobody cares about that any longer. People are having the discussions. And people will say, well, it's a lot of the right-wing pundits that are having these discussions. There might be some truth to that, but I'm not right-wing. I'm not conservative. I'm not a MAGA follower. I'm not a Trump supporter. I'm not a Christian. I'm not religious. So you cannot pull that out of your bag of tricks to say, oh, everything Steve says must be wrong because of this, this, and this. Oh, he must be a Trump supporter. No. He must be Christian. No. He must be a theist. No. So don't waste my time in my comment section commenting that I'm some radical right-wing ideologue because maybe I might have something about, Ben Shapiro that I happen to might agree with and other things I don't, or Matt Walsh that I agree with and I don't. I don't think he's an honest player. I don't think Matt Walsh does have the best intentions in heart. But that doesn't mean if he says 1 + 1 = 2, 1 + 1 doesn't equal 2. But I do think there's dishonest agents out there. I do think the Dylan McVaney's of the world are dishonest. I think the Jeffrey, what's the other name of the one? The non-binary guy. I just said non-binary guy. Somebody's going to he's non-binary. Jeffrey Marsh. Jeffrey Marsh. I'm horrible at names. I think Jeffrey Marsh is dishonest. Right? I mean, the whole Bud Light thing, I'll leave you with this. The whole Bud Light thing with Dylan McVaney cost me a good friend of mine. Good friend of mine because they couldn't accept that I had a differing position on that. That I was somehow a transphobe because I thought Dylan was the worst possible person to be a spokesperson or have anything to do with Bud Light because that person made a living mocking women. That's what they did. They were a gay man that mocked women. And I thought that was disgusting because I do support women. But if they would have picked somebody like Blair White, I would have had more success, or even better, Buck Angel. I couldn't think of the last name. Buck Angel. If Bud Light would have had Buck Angel be their spokesperson, they probably would have soared to the heavens as one of the greatest beers of all time. Because I don't think anybody would have cared. I don't think the rednecks of the world would care. I don't think the Bud drinkers of the world would have cared. I wouldn't have cared. So when somebody says, well, I'm transphobic because I thought Dylan McVaney was a bad choice, then how am I a transphobe if I thought Buck Angel would have been a great choice? Or Laverne Cox, or Natalie the girl from Supergirl. Natalie, again, I'm terrible at names, but it doesn't matter. You know what I'm talking about. But again, or Blair White or whatever, they would have made great spokespersons. So it's not the fact that they had a trans person for Bud Light. It was who they happened to pick. And I don't know why people don't understand that. I really don't. There's a lot of people that thought Mulvaney was a bad actor. There's nothing transphobic without that. They could have picked somebody who embodies being trans, that accepts the real aspect of who they are and born, being biologically male and transition to female or vice versa, but not try to change the biological facts underlying that. You don't see Blair White going out there going, I was never born male. Then what the hell does it mean to be trans? She was born biologically male. She accepts that. And she's transitioned and she expresses herself female. And I don't think anybody's going to care. They're like, you're female, sure. They're going to treat her as female because they really do accept that is her being, I guess. I mean, that is her identity. And out of respect, you accept that. I got no problem with that at all. Same thing with Buck Angel. He should use a male bathroom. I mean, good God. But there are dishonest agents out there. There are the Jessica Naives of the world, and I don't understand why people have to think that everybody out there is an honest agent, because they're not. They're just not. There might be people out there that would have an issue no matter who they pick. That might be true. But I just don't think it would be anywhere near the backlash it was. I really don't. But don't assume that I listen to certain people and just believe everything they say. I take all sides. I am a centrist. Don't put me in any category. Don't lump me in with the right wingers or left wingers. I think they're both atrocious. I hate the Democrats. I hate the Republicans. I want them all out of office. I'm more for less government. I'm more for more ability to control our own lives. I'm more for term limits. I think that the people in politics are not for their constituents any longer. I think it's there for themselves. And so, yeah, don't group me in with any kind of political thing, because this gender ideological stuff is politically motivated to a great degree, because they have people in politics pushing for this stuff to get it into the classrooms, to get it into the elementary schools. And I will stand against that, because you go to school to learn the basics. You don't learn to school, in school to learn critical race theory or critical gender theory. Take those in college if you want to. Absolutely. They're available, whatever. But that's not something that you learn in 5th grade. So with that, I'm going to leave you to it. Hopefully I did some justice to this. Let me know what your thoughts are. Undoomed, I hope you watch it. Maybe give some comments. I want to know what he thinks. If he can sit down and watch 2 hours of this, that'd be awesome. So I know I did tag him, and like I said, I'm a mod for him on his channel, so we do have correspondence. I respect the guy. I think he did a really good job. I really liked this video. If you didn't like his video, if you don't like my video, that's fine. Absolutely. Just tell me why, and we can have discussion, or if I have time. But like I said, don't come at me sideways. I don't have time for it. It's a waste of everybody's time. So with that, I'm going to bid you guys good night. Thank you, mods, for showing up. Thank you for my subscribers. Thank you for my members. And I'm so glad that I got this under 2 hours, because I'm tired and I got to work in the morning. So with that, we'll see you later, and good night. I will be putting this on Rumble as well. I'm going to wait till it renders, and I'm going to put the video on Rumble. So with that, good night.